Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a really comprehensive look at, well, a nearly three-decade career that had just a massive cultural impact, especially in the early 21st century. We're talking about the life and the enduring legacy of Naya Rivera. She lived from 1987 to 2020.
Yeah, and for so many of you listening, the first thing that probably comes to mind is Santana Lopez, right?
Yeah.
That incredibly sharp, witty, sometimes, acid-tongued cheerleader from Glee.
Absolutely.
But our sources, they really dig deeper. It's a much longer story. We're charting her journey right from being a child actor. I mean, she was basically an industry veteran before she was even 10 years old.
It's kind of wild when you think about it that way.
It is. And then tracing that path into becoming this truly pioneering force for queer representation, for Afro-Latina representation. She genuinely reshaped visibility on television. Prominently.
So our mission today is really to get a handle on the scope of that transformation. We're diving into a pretty comprehensive stack of sources here, factual timelines covering that incredible longevity, but also, the more nuanced cultural analysis of her impact.
And the personal stuff, too. The details from her life, her memoir, which was incredibly candid. And then, of course, the really tragic circumstances of her final days.
Yeah. So the core question I think we're trying to grapple with is, how did an artist who navigated such, really tumultuous waters in Hollywood, facing professional setbacks, personal struggles, intense public scrutiny, how did she still manage to emerge as what so many sources call a trailblazer?
And a guiding light. That phrase comes up a lot.
Yeah.
A guiding light for millions of young people who are looking to see themselves on screen, maybe for the first time. It wasn't luck.
No.
It really speaks to this just astonishing dedication she had to authenticity and to advocacy.
Okay, so to really get that impact, we have to start at the beginning. The foundation. Naya Marie Rivera, born 1987, Valencia, California. And when you look at her heritage, it's immediately clear that this complex identity she later championed, it was literally part of her DNA.
Absolutely. She was of African-American, German, and Puerto Rican descent. And that blend naturally led to her later self-identification as Afro-Latinx, which became so crucial.
Why crucial specifically?
Well, because at the time she really rose to fame, with Glee, Afro-Latinx visibility in mainstream entertainment was, it was severely lacking. That's putting it mildly.
Okay.
She filled a void that, frankly, few others were even acknowledging, let alone addressing on such a huge platform.
And her family environment, it sounds like it was kind of steeped in the industry, or at least adjacent to it. Her mother, Yolanda, was a former model, later a real estate agent. Her father, George, worked in IT, but for places like Disney and Universal Music.
Yeah, so they understood the machine, right? Even if they weren't always in the spotlight themselves. It was a household that got how the entertainment world works.
And the talent wasn't just Naya either, which is interesting.
No, it ran in the family. Her younger brother is Michael Rivera, who played tight end in the NFL. And her sister, Nicaila Rivera, became a successful runway model.
And we also learned something about language in the family.
Yeah, that Naya grew up speaking English and, some Spanish. But later, as an adult, she made a really conscious effort to become properly fluent.
Oh, really? Why was that?
Specifically, so she could raise her son, Josie, bilingually. It wasn't just a passive thing. It was an active commitment to her heritage, ensuring he had that connection.
Wow. But there's another connection here, going back even further, that really seems to frame her later life and work, especially the advocacy side.
Yes. This is probably the most compelling part of her roots, I think. Her maternal grandmother, Clara White, she was an active, really dedicated figure in the civil rights movement.
Seriously involved?
Oh, yeah. Sources know Clara was involved in organizing, participating in huge historical moments. We're talking the March on Washington, the Selma to Montgomery marches.
And not just marching, right. She was more involved than that.
She was an organizer of protests. She was an abortion counselor back then. She even worked alongside activist lawyers like Lloyd Barbee. It's clear Naya came from this multi-generational line of people who understood and really prioritized social advocacy, standing up publicly.
You absolutely see that reflected later on, that deep historical commitment showing up in Naya's own charity work, her political involvement.
It provides such powerful context, doesn't it? Her commitment later in life to women's rights, civil rights, LGBTQ plus rights. It wasn't just, a celebrity trend. It felt inherited. It was part of her family's legacy, a genuine pattern of activism.
Okay, so let's track the acting career itself. It started incredibly early, like infancy practically.
Yeah, her mother's agent represented her from when she was just 8 or 9 months old. Think about that.
And then by age 4, she lands her first really big visible role. Hillary Winston on that CBS sitcom, The Royal Family, with Red Fox and Della Reese.
Huge stars. And she gets a Young Artist Award nomination right out of the gate, at 4.
How did she even manage that? Like the
Well, she
logistics.
couldn't read scripts yet, obviously, so she learned her lines purely by recitation. Someone would say them, she'd memorize them perfectly. And that skill, that speed and learning lines, that professional precision, it apparently stayed with her throughout her whole career, a real hallmark of her work ethic.
But that set, The Royal Family, brief as her time was, it held this really dark, defining moment. Our sources highlight it as something that deeply impacted her professionally.
Yeah, it's tough to even talk about.
Hmm.
She witnessed the star, the legend Red Fox, suffer a fatal heart attack right there on set.
Oh my God, as a 4-year-old?
Unimaginable. She wrote about it later in her memoir. Call him and her intergenerational BFFs. And she said the event left this lasting psychological scar. She admitted that for years afterwards, she'd get terrible anxiety, especially around filming season finales.
That connection, linking the end of a show with that trauma, that's heavy.
Incredibly heavy. After the Royal Family was canceled, she kept working, though,
Yeah.
consistently through the next decade, popping up in shows that really defined that era. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Family Matters, The Bernie Mix Show.
But this is also when she starts running into that problem she talked about, the mixed race casting bind in Hollywood.
Ah, yeah. This is crucial for understanding her early struggles. Back in the 90s, early 2000s, casting directors often wanted, easily boxed identities. Naya found herself caught in this weird trap.
How so?
Well, she often struggled to get roles because, as she put it, she felt she wasn't black enough or Latina enough to fit neatly into one specific box they were looking for.
So she didn't fit the specific molds they had in mind.
Exactly. But then the flip side was her mixed heritage sometimes allowed her to audition more broadly, to play a lot of different ethnicities. So while it maybe widened her audition pool in theory,
It also meant she wasn't easily anchored to one identity in the eyes of the gatekeepers?
precisely, it really highlights the industry's deep discomfort back then, and maybe still now, to some extent, with identities that weren't easily categorized. It was a huge hurdle for mixed-race actors.
And even when she did navigate that casting paradox, she still faced blatant bias. She told this shocking audition story.
Oh, the one about her lips, yeah.
She was told the part went to a white woman because a male executive found, and this is a direct quote, the size of her lips was distracting.
Which she immediately called out as racist. And rightly so. I mean, to have a physical feature inherently tied to her Black and Hispanic identity used as the reason she didn't get a job. It just shows the kind of aggressions, micro and macro, she was constantly dealing with, even after years of professional work.
And alongside these professional hurdles, she was dealing with personal stuff too. Things typical for a young person under that kind of pressure. She battled anorexia as a teenager.
Yeah, and during the gaps between acting jobs, she had to take side gigs just to make ends meet. She was a telemarketer at one point, a nanny, even a greeter at Abercrombie and Fitch.
Wow. That period, the hustle, the financial uncertainty, recovering from health issues, it really paints a picture of resilience later on, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's hard to imagine the Naya Rivera we know making cold calls as a telemarketer, but it shows the sheer grit, the reality of her life before Glee hit.
And here's another piece of evidence of her just relentlessly trying to find a path. Our sources uncovered this great little nugget. She auditioned for American Idol.
No way.
Yeah, during the San Francisco auditions, got cut in the very first round.
Get out. One of the most vocally talented people from Glee. Rejected at the first hurdle of Idol. It just underscores how tough it is to break through, how much rejection she must have faced.
Which brings us right to that crucial turning point. She studied screenwriting New York Film Academy in 2008, and then she auditioned for Glee. Why Glee specifically?
She said she wanted a show where she could do it all. Sing, dance, and act, all in the same show. And she apparently drew on her own high school experience, feeling like an outsider, unpopular, to really nail the audition for Santana Lopez, who she called the high school terror.
Okay, so Santana Lopez. When Glee starts in 2009, she's definitely not the main focus.
No, not at all. Initially, she's a supporting character, mostly there for those really sharp, often pretty cruel one-liners that kind of set the high school hierarchy.
But you could see it right away, couldn't you? The writers, the audience, they recognized that star power immediately.
Oh, totally. Her screen time, her musical numbers, they just surged. And by the start of season 2, boom, she's promoted to series regular. Producers explicitly said it was her magnetism on screen. It was undeniable. She had to be central.
And the shift from just being the funny, mean girl to becoming this this cultural vanguard, it really happened when the writers started exploring Santana's sexuality.
Yeah, that arc. And initially, according to some reports, the idea was maybe just like a funny little thing,
Oh,
a
yeah.
quick joke, playing into that trope of the sexy, maybe experimenting mean cheerleader.
But Naya didn't let that happen.
No. Our sources are pretty clear that she actively pushed back. She wanted that storyline. Santana coming out as lesbian, falling for her best friend Brittany, played by Heather Morris. She wanted it treated seriously, with complexity, with respect. She saw the potential for real representation there.
And thank goodness she did, because the performance that came out of that was transformative.
Yeah.
It led to huge critical acclaim and this massive cultural phenomenon online, Britannia.
Right, and she got awards for it, too.
Yeah.
Screen Actors Guild Award, ALMA Awards, recognizing how she balanced Santana's tough, sarcastic exterior with this incredibly heartbreaking vulnerability of a young woman figuring out her identity and falling in love.
Her portrayal wasn't just good acting, though. It really set a new bar for what network TV could do. She's seen now, pretty universally, as one of the earliest, most prominent, most profound examples of both Afro-Latino and queer Latinx representation on primetime.
Absolutely, providing visibility for two communities that were, and often still are, sidelined.
The reaction was intense. She wasn't just a popular character, she became an instant icon. Sources call her a gay icon, sure, but also, more specifically, a true icon for all Black and brown girls, which shows you the breadth of how she resonated across identities.
And this impact, it actually translated into serious academic notice, which is pretty rare for a teen musical comedy, right?
Definitely not typical.
Multiple scholarly articles were written focusing on the positive, non-stereotypical way Santana's race and sexuality were handled. She was cited constantly as, effectively, the first lesbian Latina on primetime television to get that kind of deep, visible storyline.
And to understand why that matters so much, what was the context before her?
Well, before Santana, if queer Latinx characters showed up at all on TV, they were often stuck in what sources called a restrictive vision. Their stories frequently ended tragically, or they were just crammed into these tired stereotypes.
The bury your gaze trope, basically.
Pretty much. And what Naya achieved, working with the writers through her sheer commitment, was a narrative that totally defied that. Santana Lopez actually got a happy ending. She got married, found stability. That provided such a powerful contrast to the usual, often devastating fates given to queer characters of color on TV back then.
Yeah, as one journalist put it really well, Naya just shattered those tropes. She gave the audience this complex, queer, Black Puerto Rican woman, infusing her with both strength and vulnerability.
And by doing that, she cracked the lid wide open on what Afro-Latinx representation could look like. Showing these characters could be central, complicated, and, importantly, deserving of happiness. Her impact was, truly groundbreaking. You can measure it.
So while she's cementing this icon status on Glee, she's also trying to launch her solo music career, right? Leveraging that platform. She signed with Columbia Records in 2011. That must have been a huge deal.
Oh, massive. And she released the single Sorry, featuring Big Sean, in 2013.
I remember that song.
Yeah, and it did okay. It hit the Billboard Rhythmic Chart Top 40. It showed she had crossover potential. But the actual album, that ran into problems.
What kind of problems?
She described it later as the project just kind of halted. She used the word politics, vague label stuff.
Frustrating. After having such huge TV success, to have the music side stall, was there any more detail on why Columbia supposedly backed off?
The accounts conflict a bit. Some sources suggested Columbia felt the single underperformed, compared to the investment and the hype around a Glee star. Her rep publicly denied she was dropped by the label, but...
But the album never materialized.
Exactly. The solo music dream didn't quite pan out as planned, forcing her to kind of pivot away from that pop star path.
So pivoting, she makes her feature film debut in a horror movie, At the Devil's Door, 2014, which isn't maybe the first genre you'd expect.
Right. But despite the film getting mixed reviews overall, her performance actually got significant praise from critics.
Oh, interesting. What did they say?
They singled her out, called her acting the standout performance, said she effectively carried the narrative with her intensity and commitment. It really reinforced that her talent went way beyond singing and comedy.
And she was looking for other creative outlets, too, it seems. She directed a short film, a PSA.
Yeah, focusing on how immigration affects children and the culture of immigrants in the U.S., which, again, shows that early desire to use her platform for social issues. It wasn't just a side project.
What was her motivation there?
She said very clearly she wanted to show how beautiful America is as a country, specifically through the lens of diversity and immigrant contributions. That directorial work really foreshadows the deep commitment to advocacy we see later on.
Okay, so after that initial wave of success, the music pivot, she makes this really profound choice to define herself outside of Santana. 2016, she publishes the memoir Sorry Not Sorry: Dreams, Mistakes, and Growing Up.
Yeah, and she was explicit about why. She felt she needed to step out of Santana's huge shadow, reclaim her own life story, mistakes and all. Especially because people were constantly asking her about being a role model. The memoir was her saying, okay, here's the real me, flaws included.
And it was remarkably transparent, like intensely so. She tackled subjects most celebrities would absolutely avoid, especially those relying on a curated image. She talked openly about her teenage battle with anorexia.
Using her own story to talk about the reality of eating disorders, especially in those high-pressure environments, which took guts.
But the revelation that really stunned people and showed her courage in fighting stigma was admitting she'd had an abortion in 2010.
Yeah, and the timing on that is key. It was shortly after splitting from Ryan Dorsey, who she later married and had her son with, but this was before that, and just as Glee was absolutely exploding.
Right on the edge of global fame. And yet she chose to share this deeply personal, politically charged information. What was her motivation, did she say?
She was crystal clear.
Yeah.
She wrote about it not for sensation, but because she felt a responsibility with her platform. She wanted to use her story to chip away at the shame and secrecy around abortion, to normalize the conversation, emphasize women's autonomy over their health choices.
Which connects right back to her grandmother's work as an abortion counselor decades earlier.
Exactly. That lineage again, it's powerful.
The memoir also gave the, let's say, unvarnished version of her very public relationship and breakup with the rapper Big Sean.
Oh, yeah. She described finding out their engagement was over via the internet at the same time as everyone else. Just brutal.
A truly modern kind of heartbreak and humiliation.
And the drama didn't stop there. She wrote that she explicitly asked him not to write a song about their relationship, hoping maybe for a quiet split.
And he responded by writing
his massive hit song, I Don't F With You, basically taking their private pain and broadcasting it globally. It just cemented their breakup as this huge, messy public spectacle. She had to live with that, constantly playing everywhere.
That must have been incredibly difficult. It makes sense then that after all that, plus the intense Glee schedule, she deliberately took some time off after her son, Josie, was born in 2015.
Yeah, definitely needed some space.
Yeah.
Focused intensely on motherhood, stability, getting away from that disruptive glare of the spotlight for a bit.
When she did return to TV, she found projects that really played to her strengths, her candidness. She popped up in Devious Maids, and she became a frequent and honestly often viral guest host on The View.
Oh yeah, those appearances generated a lot of buzz. She wasn't afraid to engage in sharp debate, be honest. Lots of viral sound bites came out of that.
But her final major recurring role, and maybe the one where she seemed most creatively fulfilled near the end, was Colette Jones on that YouTube series, Step Up, High Water.
Right. She came in as the lead for the second and third seasons, playing a school administrator, a dance instructor.
And the people she worked with there spoke so highly of her. The show's producer called her the cast's North Star, said she was more excited than she's ever been for a season of TV right before season 3 started production.
It really felt like a true resurgence for her, a deep satisfaction in the work she was doing right before she died.
And speaking of final contributions, she did voice work too, right?
Yeah, she completed voice work for the animated movie Batman, The Long Halloween. She voiced Catwoman, Selena Kyle. Iconic role. The film came out posthumously in 2021 and was dedicated to her memory.
So beyond the acting, the singing, the directing, what really defines her legacy now is that authentic philanthropy and activism. This wasn't just celebrity lip service.
No, not at all. She was a lifelong Democrat, a relentless advocate for LGBTQ rights, immigrants' rights, women's rights. She consistently spoke out against racism. Her former publicist actually called her ahead of her time in her advocacy.
Her support for the LGBTQ plus community was constant. She hosted the GLA Media Awards twice. Remember that time with Corey Monteith where they auctioned off kisses for charity?
Raised $15,000 just like that. And it wasn't just big events. She wrote that beautiful love letter to the LGBTQ community for Billboard during Pride Month in 2017. Just showing up as an ally consistently, long after Glee ended.
But the charity that seemed closest to her heart, the one she poured her own time and resources into, was Alexandria House.
Yes, Alexandria House. It's
Yeah.
a transitional women's shelter in Los Angeles. She often called it her favorite charity.
And this needs emphasis. It wasn't just writing checks.
No way. Sources detail how she was actively organizing fundraisers, volunteering there herself extensively, right up through 2019, 2020, just before her death.
Yeah.
That hands-on commitment, it really tells you something about her character.
And that commitment was so deep that after she passed, her Glee co-stars picked up the mantle. They started the annual Snicksmith campaign.
Named after one of her old social media drives, to keep raising funds for Alexandria House in her memory, ensuring her tangible work continues. It's beautiful, actually.
Her political involvement was active, too. Performed at the White House with the Glee cast during the Obama years, campaigned for voter registration for Hillary Clinton in 2016. She just wove her activism into everything she did as an adult.
Okay, now we have to turn to the final, just profoundly heartbreaking chapter. July 8th, 2020. Naya rents a pontoon boat at Lake Piru, a place she knew well, visited for years, apparently considered it a sanctuary. She's there with her 4-year-old son, Josie.
The boat's reported overdue. Authorities find it about 3 hours later. Josie is alone on the deck. He's asleep, wrapped in a towel, crucially wearing his life jacket.
But Naya isn't there. And she wasn't wearing a life jacket, though there were others on the boat. She was known to be a strong swimmer.
The child's account. It's just devastating.
It forms the core of what we know. Ahosi told investigators they'd been swimming. Naya helped him get back onto the boat. And then he watched her struggle, trying desperately to climb back aboard herself, reaching up, calling for help, before she slipped under the water and disappeared.
There was a later lawsuit, right, which clarified some details.
Yeah, a wrongful death suit filed by Ryan Dorsey, Josie's dad. It suggested Josie likely got back on the boat by himself while his mother was struggling. But the core tragedy, the sequence, her immediate focus being on her son's survival, that remains consistent.
Authorities presumed drowning almost immediately. The sheriff's summary was just haunting. He said Naya, quote, mustered enough energy to save her son, but not enough to save herself.
The search went on for 5 agonizing days. Her body was finally recovered on July 13th.
And this is where that awful, somber coincidence comes in, a detail that just sent shockwaves through the Glee family and beyond.
Her body was found on the exact 7-year anniversary of the death of her Glee co-star Corey Monteith, July 13th. Just unbelievable.
The official cause of death was confirmed quickly, accidental drowning. The death certificate noted she likely died within minutes. The reaction was just overwhelming. Tributes poured in from everyone, politicians like Kamala Harris, countless stars, and of course, her absolutely grief-stricken Glee co-stars.
And in a really beautiful gesture, the show's creators, Ryan Murphy, Ian Brennan, Brad Falchuk, they immediately announced they were setting up a college fund for Josie.
That terrible coincidence, the July 13th date, it also led to this huge surge in views for her Glee cover.
If I Die Young, the band Perry song, which she'd performed years earlier in the tribute episode for Corey Monteith, it just closed this awful, tragic loop of loss for everyone connected to the show.
Ultimately, the commentary wasn't just about losing an actress, it was about losing a real cultural force. Journalists kept saying the world lost not just a vibrant performer, but a guiding light for all of us struggling for more diversity and representation, really emphasizing the tragedy of losing her future potential, all the advocacy work she still had left to do.
Naya Rivera's life story, when you look at it all, it's just this stunning mix of resilience and real, tangible impact. She went from being a professional child actor, navigating those tough mixed-race casting issues, into motherhood, and then emerged as this acclaimed Afro-Latina and queer icon.
And crucially, as we've seen, a deeply committed philanthropist whose advocacy felt so constant, so authentic, rooted, really, in her family's own civil rights history.
Her career, it really defies any simple box. But the impact, immense, measurable, on visibility, on representation. And we saw how she actively used her own difficult life experiences, the anorexia, talking openly about her abortion, not for shock, but specifically to fight stigma, to encourage real dialogue. That felt like the core of her advocacy.
Yeah, that seemed to be the defining thread.
So, as you reflect on her whole story, maybe consider this. What does Naya Rivera's life tell us about that essential, often hidden work that celebrities sometimes do? The real work behind the scenes. Showing up at local women's shelters, pushing writers for better character arcs, publicly fighting personal stigma, all to push for genuine social change, even while their main projects are still going on.
Right. And what immediate, actionable cultural momentum gets lost when a voice like hers, so dedicated, so effective, so powerfully authentic, is silenced way too soon. Her legacy is this potent reminder that meaningful advocacy takes so many forms, and the work she inspired, well, it continues long after she's gone.
Definitely something to think about, the
Yeah.
scale of that quiet work. Long after this deep dive is done, we really appreciate you exploring this complex and very meaningful story with us today.